What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I want to give a quick thanks to Noom for sponsoring this video, who we'll talk about here in a second. But we need to establish something. The Beyonders need to exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They need to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And not because of some moral, philosophical quandary or this thing that makes us look at ourselves introspectively and experience a kind of existential crisis. What is the meaning of it all? The Beyonders need to be in the MCU because they're cool, man, and they killed the multiverse. Okay, look, here's the thing, right? Like, the Beyonders destroyed the multiverse. Like, literally, they killed the multiverse. Well, technically, it was Doctor Doom who did it, but the Beyonders were going to do it. He just did it first, right? We'll explain that kind of to a degree, right? Here's the thing, man. The Marvel Cinematic Universe so far has been pretty tame, even with the multiverse coming in. But something that I want to specify here, there is nothing you've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has ever been even almost kind of possibly, depending on the circumstance, slightly remotely close to the power of the Beyonders. Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet? He's a kid with a pop gun. Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet could take on like Galactus, right? He could handle Galactus. He probably could have handled the Celestials, and maybe he did. I don't really know. But like, those are cosmic entities, right? They are less powerful than the Infinity Gauntlet. If Thanos came running up on the Beyonders with an Infinity Gauntlet, they would be like, ha, and then just bam, right? Just lay the smackdown on that guy in no uncertain terms. But before we get into our discussion about the Beyonders, I do want to talk about Noom. So Noom is what I like to refer to as a food psychological suite, in the sense that Noom basically helps you understand the psychology behind why it is that you eat the way you do. For me as a person, it wasn't simply enough to just track calories. I wanted to understand why I ate the kind of foods that I did, the psychology that went behind it. Is it really just that bag of chips is amazing, or is there something subconscious going on? And the daily classes that Noom offers really help me to understand what's going on behind the scenes in my subconscious when it comes to eating the kind of things that I eat and why I eat those things in excess. A really good example of this is a class they have called Breaking the Behavior Chain. And I absolutely loved this class because one of the things that it taught is that usually people, when it comes to the psychology and basically coping mechanisms, food is a very popular coping mechanism, but it usually starts with some kind of a trigger. This trigger can be environmental, it can be a result of your childhood, some kind of a background, but understanding where that comes from is tantamount to being able to fix it. And that's the benefit of Noom. That's the biggest benefit of Noom, as far as I'm concerned, is getting a better understanding of yourself. Because if you can trace those unhealthy habits back to a singular point, and then you can understand how to correct that, that sets you on the road for lasting change. So that Noom's science-backed approach not simply just helps you track what it is that you're eating, they also help you to change your life, to change your goals, and to get yourself on the path of a healthier lifestyle. So make sure you guys check the link in the description or go to noom.com/geekculture to take your free evaluation. And it's really, really quick and easy. It's not complicated at all, I promise. But that's noom.com/geekculture, GeekCulture. I can't spell. But make sure you guys check that out. Let's get back into our video. So, talking about the Beyonders, here's the thing about this, right? Here's a crazy thing. Let's kind of wind the clock back a little bit, because there is a bit of an original explanation about the Beyonders, and then we'll talk about how we can put them in the MCU. But there is a bit of an original explanation which doesn't necessarily apply to the comics anymore, but it can apply to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in fact, it fits in perfectly. And if anything, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has actually already set the stage for the Beyonders to be introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse now, right? The MCM, I guess we can call it that, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Doesn't have the same ring as the MCU. Maybe it's nostalgia, I don't really know. But here's the thing, the original explanation that was given to us is that there was an event that took place in Marvel Comics, which I think was either the Kree-Skrull War or maybe Operation Galactic Storm, I can't remember which one. But basically, it drew the attention of the Beyonder, this being who just existed out there and was just incredibly powerful. Literally, in the original Secret Wars in 1984, it was a booming voice from the sky. It was like a tear in space, like the voice of God. Snatched up all the heroes, all the villains, said fight to the death, and whoever wins, I'll make your wildest dream come true. Ultimately, Doctor Doom stole the power of the Beyonder and then basically brought the conflict to an end. And then the Beyonder got his powers back and then ran. And then we got Secret Wars 2 when the Beyonder was more curious about people, so it showed up on Earth dressed like John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. Not even lying. They looked exactly alike. It was kind of uncanny. I guess it was the style back then. And then there came a point when the Beyonder spent time with Woman of the Night. It was a different time. It was the 1980s. The rules were a little more lax back then. Now, fast forward a little bit to Fantastic Four issue number 319. And what this did is actually change the original explanation of how the Beyonder basically arrived in the Marvel Universe in the first place. That what had basically happened here is that there was a guy named Owen Reese who was, by all standards of measurement, a loser. And this guy worked at a place called the Acme Atomic Corporation, and that he had inadvertently created a cosmic cube. And that the way cosmic cubes work is that they're essentially portals, right? You can rip a hole in space and time that will basically grant you access to the Beyondverse. And that energy from the Beyondverse would pour into a containment device, usually in the shape of a cube. And then it was equal to the Infinity Gauntlet in power. And depending on who was writing the story, sometimes more powerful, but you could basically do anything with it. What Owen Reese did is he accidentally opened a portal to the Beyondverse, but because there was no containment unit for that energy to pour into, what ended up happening is half of it went into Owen Reese, and the other half just went out into the universe, eventually became sentient, and then became the Beyonder. So that was the new explanation of how the Beyonder ended up in the Marvel Universe. Now, fast forward to the single greatest comic book story ever told, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers, New Avengers, son. Single greatest comic book story ever told. I don't care what anybody says, right? It's the great. And the first story arc, the Infinity Gauntlet gets destroyed. Oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm so excited, people. But it is an exciting story. I love it, right? Captain America gets the Infinity Gauntlet, all the Infinity Stones get destroyed, like the Time Stone vanishes and then reappears and then takes Captain America like 50,000 years in the future. It's a phenomenal story, right? The greatest comic book story ever written in the history of man. I had something in my eye for a second. Now, here's what happens, right? There's the multiversal collapse and all that kind of stuff, but here's where the Beyonders come in. Spoilers for a story that is 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 9 years old. So here's the thing, right? Technically, it's actually older than that. It's about 10 years old. It started in 2012. But here's what ended up happening, right? That basically what had gone on is that the Beyonder, as it originally appeared in Secret Wars 1984, was more of like a child unit, but it was a member of a larger race that was astronomical in power. And so when the multiverse is collapsing, everything's coming to an end, the incursions are happening, right? So like universes are crashing into each other, being destroyed, all that kind of stuff. The Illuminati's, like Reed and all those guys, they're trying to figure out what's going on. One of the things that happens is Reed sends Hank Pym into the multiverse to find the source of the incursions, or to find this kind of group that they've only ever heard of, but never actually seen before. They were referred to as the Ivory Kings or the White Lords of Wild Space. They had really, really cool names, right? But they had only ever heard of them, right? There had been rumors about them, discussions of them. They'd heard people say them before, but they'd never actually seen what they look like. And so what ends up happening is Hank Pym goes out into the multiverse, and then there comes a point when he's traveling through and he comes upon this battle where it's basically the Ivory Kings, right? The White Lords, the Beyonders, and they are killing the cosmic entities. And when I say killing, I mean it's a bloodbath, right? Like it's like stomping on an anthill. These cosmic entities never had a chance, and they're killing all of them from across every single universe, right? They're killing them all across the multiverse at the same time, right? They're killing Infinity, Eternity, Master Order, Lord Chaos, Eon, just all these guys, Galactus, they're all being obliterated by the Beyonders, right? It's only 3 of them. Only 3 Beyonders are killing, like it's literally 1 Beyonder in one universe, 1 Beyonder in another universe, and then another Beyonder in a 3rd universe. He only sees 3 universes. But literally 1 Beyonder was enough to wipe out all the cosmic entities in any particular universe. Now, as this battle rages on, it becomes obvious how overpowered these Beyonders are, because after all the cosmic entities are killed, the Living Tribunal steps in, right? The Living Tribunal just appears. And Hank Pym almost goes crazy by witnessing it all. He's like, I almost like, he's recapping this whole story to like Captain America and to Tony Stark and Reed Richards and all these guys, and he's telling them all this, and he's like, I almost went insane just being in the presence of the Living Tribunal. I almost went nuts experiencing this. And ultimately he's like, the Beyonders killed the Living Tribunal. They destroyed this thing. Just to give you guys preference, leaving out like the anomalies, like Protege, Marquis of Death, people like that, the Living Tribunal is the 2nd most powerful being next to God, right? The one above all. It's insane how powerful the Living Tribunal is. Anything it wants to do can be done, and the Beyonders annihilated it. And so at that point, Hank Pym's just like, there's nothing we can do. Like we can't defeat that level of power. We can't, there's nothing, the Infinity Gauntlet, man, come on, dude. It'd be like throwing pebbles at a whale. There's nothing we can do here. It's not gonna make any difference. There's no way for us to stop that level of power. They're going to end the multiverse. Everything is going to die. It's hopeless here. And so what you end up finding out later on is that when Owen Reese gained his powers initially by accidentally creating that cosmic cube, that's a universal constant. In every universe across the multiverse, the Molecule Man gains his powers the exact same way. And the reason why is because he was engineered to be that way. That seemingly somewhere along the line, whether it was because of the original event that led to the Beyonder becoming curious and then the other Beyonders becoming aware, although historically speaking, the Beyonders have actually had a lengthy history in terms of their involvement in the Marvel Comics universe. Like they've been acting for quite some time. They were the ones who created the original Savage Land. They were supposedly responsible for the creation of all life in the universe. It depends on who's telling the story. But regardless, that the Beyonders themselves had basically engineered the Molecule Man and made his origin the exact same, so he would be one half of a cosmic cube, because their intention was to detonate every Molecule Man across the multiverse just to see what would happen, because the destruction of that Molecule Man would lead to the destruction of the entire universe. He was literally a bomb, and when he went off, the whole universe would go with him. They just wanted to blow up the whole multiverse, right? Blow them all up at the same time, just to see what would happen, a grand science experiment. And then, of course, it basically led to Dr. Doom and the Molecule Man ultimately defeating the Beyonders, and then Dr. Doom stole the power of the Beyonders and literally became God King Doom. It was pretty amazing. He was all white. He was like sitting on the tree of Idrisil, right? Like the world tree from Thor. I mean, it was crazy, right? Like no one was on the same level of power. Well, no, I take that back. When Black Panther got the Infinity Gauntlet, he was seemingly on the same level of power as Dr. Doom, but it didn't necessarily seem like it. It was nuts, right? It was Secret Wars 2015 was a crazy, amazing story. God, I love that story so much. Matter of fact, once I'm done with this, I'm gonna go back home and start reading it again. I loved Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers. But the thing about this is that you can roll this over into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it makes perfect sense. It's easily done. It's so easily done. Because let's say, for example, that we disregard the Fantastic Four issue number 319 explanation, and we go with the classic explanation, right? The classic Beyonder explanation. And we say that basically something happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe multiverse that made the Beyonder aware of its existence. Well, we already have an answer to that question. Sylvie killing He Who Remains and the multiverse coming back. I mean, an infinite expanse of possible alternate realities just exploding into existence, someone's gonna notice that. Right? That's not something that you just don't happen to know about, right? This is, I mean, unless you're in a universe, but if you're on the outside, like the Beyondverse, you're gonna notice that, man, this little tiny speck that just suddenly explodes outward, yeah, that's gonna catch your attention. Now, following that, it's whatever we want it to be. It's whatever line of logic or reason we want it to be. We know the Russo brothers want to develop Secret Wars from like the 1984 version. So you can literally build on that, right? You can say that like when the multiverse suddenly just appeared out of nowhere, that the Beyonders sent one of their own to investigate, to see what it was, right? To look inside. And that's where Secret Wars that the Russo brothers would direct basically came from, that it's the Beyonder appearing. We don't know the back end. We don't know that like there's a Beyondverse and the other Beyonders have sent him there or anything like that. We just simply know this nigh omnipotent being that would just dwarf the power of anything we've ever seen before suddenly shows up, and then that movie unfolds however it unfolds. Knowing the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they'll kill the Beyonder. And this is one of those few instances when I actually agree with them killing the villain. Because what that would do is it would draw the attention of the Beyonders. The Beyonders would just kind of be like, damn, they got that level of power out there? They killed one of us? Okay, like, we got to see what's going on. And then by whatever manner and whatever means, it leads to them drawing the conclusion that they have to destroy the multiverse, right? They want to, or it's an experiment. They don't really care about anybody in it, right? They just want to see what would happen if they did. It's like a kid burning ants with the sun in a magnifying glass, right? Like that's what they want to do. And so that leads to basically the death of the multiverse. Now, here's the thing, right? The Beyonders showing up, killing the cosmic entities, the eventual destruction of the multiverse. This could only really be done if we get to the point where the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Marvel and Disney are like, we're done. Like we're finished making movies. Like we're basically done making movies. We're not going to make any more Marvel movies. I don't really see that being a case. Literally, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a license to print money. So I don't see Disney being like, you know what? We're tired of money now. We've grown bored of just cash. We want to go explore the stars. I don't see that being the case. And so I imagine this is something they would do if they wanted to reboot, if they wanted to say that like the multiverse will always find a way to return, right? So this is the modern day equivalent of like the Big Bang, right? The multiverse is destroyed and some colossal multiversal calamity / conflict between the Beyonders and anybody else they want to invoke. And that ultimately the Beyonders win and the multiverse is totally destroyed. But like everything else in this world, it goes in cycles, and that this energy has to go somewhere. So it coalesces and then it explodes outward in a Big Bang and gives birth to a new multiverse. What do you know? New Spider-Man movies, new Iron Man movies, new Fantastic Four movies, all that kind of stuff. A complete and total reboot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is something they could do in that circumstance. But barring those two scenarios, it's really hard to invoke something like the Beyonder and then continue after that, right? It's really hard to invoke a storyline where these beings from beyond the multiverse with just the power of God, essentially, end up destroying the multiverse, and then things just kind of continue on. It's hard to make that work. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you all think down in the comments section. I'm really curious what your all's thoughts are. Make sure you check out Noom, and I will catch you all later. Peace.